Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Johnny Bitar. I am the President and CEO of Applicant Insight, Insight. This is going to be our final installment in the Samba Safety three-part webinar series that will cover the inner workings of the Qorta CSA monitoring program. Hear from Samba Safety's transportation strategist, Steve Schwint, as he discusses how carriers are going to effectively utilize comprehensive CSA monitoring and illustrate their state-of-the-art analytics portal and transportation dashboard. Steve is a Senior Director of Product Management with Samba Safety. His primary responsibility is for the product strategy of the transportation product line, including CSA monitoring. Steve has been in the transportation industry for over 6 years and has previously worked for Vigilo prior to joining the Samba Safety family. We would like to ask you to, if you have any questions, please type them in the chat, and Kate Silvas, our DOT product manager, will ask those questions to Steve at the end of his presentation. And without further ado, Steve.
All right, thank you, Johnny. Pleasure to be here today and talk about all things CSA monitoring and Qorta transportation related. Go ahead and share my screen. So before we get into the heart of things and talk about what Samba Safety can offer from a CSA management perspective, I do want to talk just very briefly about sort of like the high-level CSA mechanics. CSA's been around for what, 13, 14 years at this point. So generally, most people are familiar with the program as a whole, but I do want to just kind of go through how it works and why it matters to set the stage for how we help our customers manage their CSA activity. So with that said, all CSA activity begins with either an inspection or a crash. In the case of inspections, those are oftentimes going to lead to violations. And obviously, the more violations you're subject to, the more likely you're going to have violations. Some carriers simply tend to skate by simply by never being inspected due to just sort of the nature of their business and their characteristics. So CSA is very interesting in that sense. It's certainly by no means an equal enforcement type of program. And that plays into how we help our customers manage their CSA data, is just being able to pinpoint the problems and the things that are specific to them. So inspection and violation activity is ultimately what's used to calculate the CSA scores across the different basics pursuant to the CSA methodology. And the general name of the game is to keep your scores low. The lower the score, the better. So that's typically what you guys are trying to do is keep those scores as low as possible, and specifically to stay out of alert status or below those predefined intervention thresholds. Ultimately, the scores have a tangible impact both on CSA scores themselves, but also on your businesses, right? So poor CSA scores can have an impact on insurance premiums, other companies wanting to do business with you, and just generally your ability to perform your duties as an organization, right? If you're constantly getting out of service violations for your drivers or your vehicles, or worst case scenario, your operating authority as a whole, obviously you're not really doing your part, right? You're not transporting goods, and it's very costly and time intensive, especially if you're also going through DOT audits, right? So CSA is interesting in the sense that it's also cyclical in nature. Poor scores tend to lead to increased inspection and violation scrutiny as well. So if you have bad scores, you're likely going to get more inspections and have higher levels of inspections and find more violations than may otherwise have been found if your scores were better. So that just speaks to the importance of CSA and why it matters. Ultimately, the only direct way for CSA scores to improve, though, is to prevent new violations from occurring and to wait for those old violation points to fall off your profile outside of that 2-year scoring window. If there's one theme of this webinar and presentation, it's how Samba helps our customers to be proactive, both from a daily monitoring perspective, but also to identify and pinpoint where your problematic areas are so that you can be very strategic and focused on where you provide your interventions and what type of training you provide to create or to be proactive and create a very good culture of safety, because that's really what it comes down to more than anything else. All right, so that's where Qorta Transportation and our products in general come into play. We'll talk about kind of 3 core areas within that. The first of which is our daily or continuous monitoring. We connect directly to our customers' FMCSA sites, and we're pulling that information into our systems and then pushing it out to our users to essentially always stay informed and always stay on top of new CSA activity and make sure that there's no surprises that come in. We're also helping our customers through a variety of reporting capabilities and analytics dashboards, which we'll talk about today as well, to again really help you identify like what your specific pain points are and how that may vary throughout your organization, so that you know exactly what groups or segments of your business or individual drivers you need to talk to, and what you need to talk to them or train them on. Essentially just getting the most bang for your buck and making sure you're making well-informed decisions that are strategic. With that, we're also helping to track trends and improvement. And then the final thing that we'll talk about is just sort of this notion and concept of the consolidated driver profile, bringing in all of the information that you have on a driver into a single consolidated space, or as we often like to call it, the single pane of glass view, if you will, because having that full context and that full understanding of everything facing that driver is very important to influencing their behavior and making sure that they're getting the right training and having the right interventions or actions taken with them. All right, so first let's talk about continuous monitoring and how we help our customers in this sense. I like to break things out kind of on between 2 different user groups. If you're a user who, or an individual who maybe isn't in Qorta, our core monitoring application on a regular basis, maybe you're not responsible for taking direct action with drivers or kicking off workflows, but generally you still want to stay informed of CSA activity. The best options that we provide are a few different email options where we push this information directly to you on a daily basis. So I know these are probably a little hard to see. It's small screenshots, but the screenshot in the bottom right is a screenshot of our CSA activity details email, and that's something that we'll send daily and tell users who have signed up for that all of the new CSA activity that occurred yesterday. And we'll get very granular. We'll tell you exactly what crashes, violations, and clean inspections were received, including the driver information, group information, any specific violation codes and the CSA points, all that good stuff. Basically everything you need to know exactly what happened and have that information sent directly to you on a daily basis. For many of our customers who have a lot of CSA data, there's a couple other email options that are less granular and a little bit more summary or aggregate based, which tend to be more useful to just see kind of the summary totals on like a group or a DOT level basis. And when I say groups in Qorta, what I'm referring to is just how you have the structure of your organization reflected in the system for driver groupings, which usually is based on organizational structures. So once you're in the system, we also have what's reflected in that second or middle screenshot, our CSA events dashboard, which is a CSA specific and very visual friendly representation of recent CSA activity. So for users who want a little bit more granular information or want some abilities to filter and isolate the data, this is a great dashboard and opportunity to do so. You can see everything at a glance from the activity across the different basic categories, but you have a lot of ability to filter the data based on groups or DOT numbers, time frames, activity types. For example, maybe you just want to focus on violations or inspections with violations. You can filter on that, and then there's a table in that bottom half of that dashboard that provides the more detailed or granular information. So same thing with that email, you'll get the CSA information down to like a violation level. But we also link there, as well as throughout Qorta, inspection and crash report details. So you can click a little hyperlink and get a pop-up modal that will give you all of the very granular detailed information that would be contained, say, in an inspection report. So if you need that information and want additional context, you'll always have that, and then you could print that out or email it as a PDF pretty easily as well. For users who are very active and in the system on a regular basis, people who are generally, I would say, responsible for managing workflows or taking action with drivers, that's where a couple of our workflows come into play. The first one I want to talk about is our Qorta alerts workflow. And this is a very helpful workflow that we provide in Qorta that's not just specific to CSA information. It's also relevant to MVR data or generally data that we're monitoring in the system. So that's the screenshot that's on the top. And the easiest way to think about that is sort of like an email inbox. You've got a queue of all of your recent events that have come in, whether that's MVR activity or CSA activity. And the idea is that you're working through those and at the very least acknowledging that these events have happened or that these alerts are there, but oftentimes taking specific action from those. So for example, each alert gives the user the ability to assign it to another user. You can assign a relevant status, a priority. You get all the information on the alert, like what happened. In the case of CSA inspections, you'll know the violations that were received, as well as have a link to the report details, as I mentioned. But then you can also attach documents or add notes as you need to, as well as assign training. So it's kind of like something came in, something happened, what do I do in response to that? And it's a very quick and effective way to take action with drivers accordingly, whether that's from a compliance standpoint or to assign training and make sure that whatever happened doesn't happen again. For a CSA specific perspective, we also offer some inspection management capabilities within this as well, to essentially help with the inspection certification process. So for example, there's a nice little checklist system that we provide that ensures that you're essentially always staying on top of that certification process. So we'll help you keep track of whether driver copies have been received, whether the repairs or defects have been certified or remedied, and then finally that you've actually certified and sent that inspection back to the state. And those different statuses or action items can be filtered on, and a lot of our users use that workflow and the alerts features in general to coordinate with, say, their maintenance teams with inspections that have vehicle maintenance violations, because they can assign the alert to somebody in maintenance who will verify that the repairs were made. They could upload the repair documentation directly to the alert and then assign it back to the original user. And then again, maybe you'd want to assign training, or they'd want to assign training directly from the alert to that driver as well, which is totally doable there. Another workflow that we offer is what we call Discover Drivers. It's a roster management tool that is very good at catching what I'll call CSA discrepancies. As many of you probably are aware or have noticed, it's not uncommon for CSA or for errors or things to go wrong in CSA world, just by nature of a lot of the information being entered in manually, as it goes through the system from the original inspection by the enforcement officer to, when it hits your FMCSA profiles, it's prone to errors. So it's not uncommon for, data to be off slightly. Sometimes a digit or two is off on a license number. And then other times you just get things that are not yours. They're not your driver, and they shouldn't be on your CSA profile. So that's where Discover Drivers comes into play. It will catch those instances where CSA activity does not match with the driver that you've entered in the system, and then it gives you a nice workflow to decide how you want to manage that information. So maybe you didn't add that driver into the system originally, but then the driver got inspected and you have CSA activity on them. You could easily add them into the system from there. We also have a nice matching algorithm that will tell you, is it likely this person already exists in the system? And, if it's a 95% match, you can click a button and match that record to the existing person in Qorta. Alternatively, like I said, if it's a not my driver situation, it's a good, easy opportunity to find those and then file a data queue, externally within the FMCSA site to get it removed from your profile. All right. So in addition to, kind of the continuous monitoring side of things and the daily workflows, we also have a very robust analytics dashboard, as well as a very large library of just general reporting capabilities, all of which are very much designed to help you identify where your pain points are and trends and track that over time. So I'll start with our Qorta Insights product, which is by and large designed to help our users and customers efficiently identify their sources of risk, where that risk is concentrated and how it's trending, to, like I said, really target where you want to have your interventions and be strategic with that. It's going to tell you the who, what, when, where, why kind of stuff, right? So it's more than just CSA. It's other data that we have piped in here as well. So it's worth noting that much of what we offer is very much about the consolidated view and not just having isolated silos of data. That's not what's most helpful. You want to have as much data as you can all rolled up into the same place so that you get that full context. That said, with CSA specifically within Qorta Insight, what we're really helping you do is identify what are those top violations that you need to focus on and violation categories that are most affecting your organization. In terms of workflow for CSA, usually you're gonna know what your starting point is, right? Because you're looking at your CSA scores, and if you have a basic that's above the intervention threshold, typically you're going to start there because that's where you want to focus your efforts and try to get your score lower and prevent new activity or violations from occurring. So Insight will help with that. You can focus on those violation categories and then determine what are the top 2 or 3 violations that our organization has received that's impacting us the most that we need to focus on. And you can approach things from 2 different angles in terms of who it is you need to talk to or where you go from there. One perspective would be, start with the violation and then see what specific drivers or what groups or units within your organization or business are contributing most to those individual violations, so that you know specifically who to talk to or where to go. The alternative approach would be, let's say your organization is a little bit more segmented and has distinct or independent operating units. You could start from the group perspective and then identify what the issues are respective to each group. That way, that each business unit is focusing on the things that are unique to them, because what may be a problem for your West region may not be the same problem for your East region. And Qorta Insight supports both of those perspectives. It's just very robust in terms of how you want to analyze the data and what filters you want to apply to that. But again, the goal is consistent. Really, it's just to pinpoint your problems, and like I've been echoing a few times so far, it's being strategic with what you do and moving away from generic scattershot approaches, if you will, to safety, to being very targeted with your interventions and training. And then again, we also support just general trending and tracking performance over time through that same dashboard. I also want to note our what we now call CSA Classic reports. Many of you may know this as the legacy Vigilo reports. We still support those and have integrated those directly within Qorta in our Qorta transportation product. There's a good number of reports. We won't talk about each one. Just know that they're there. I would say that Qorta Insight is largely replacing a lot of that functionality in a more modern data analytics dashboard kind of way. But those reports are still available. Some of them have a little bit increased like CSA specific drill down. That's still very valuable, as well as some additional workflows. So that goes back to my Vigilo days, and we still have a lot of customers who rely on those reports and really enjoy them. The last thing I'll mention is our vehicle maintenance report. This one's kind of a newer shift for us, moving away from the driver-centric view to a more vehicle-centric view. Conceptually, it's very straightforward. Really what we're doing is giving our users and customers the ability to view violation and inspection activity on a vehicle or equipment basis. So you can look up with either a license plate number or a VIN number and view the violation and inspection histories for that piece of equipment. We're still linking all of the inspection details, so you'll still get the driver information and all that good stuff. But it's very useful for many of our customers, particularly their maintenance teams who want some additional context when they're making repairs, as well as customers who just generally want to manage by equipment rather by drivers. Or maybe they're using a third-party management company, or they don't necessarily have direct control over the drivers, so they tend to go the vehicle route instead. All right. The last bucket of features and functionality that I'll talk about is the comprehensive driver view. So this is where it essentially all comes together, right? It's a consolidated driver profile view where we're bringing in everything that we have on a driver, whether that's CSA specific or MVR activity, crash and claims, training, telematics for that matter, or anything that you may want on the driver. We have a pretty robust activity management system where you can just add essentially anything that you'd want and categorize it, and it'll all show up in the activity history section, which is sort of a running log of all events on a driver, and that's the represented in the bottom portion of that screenshot on this slide. So again, it's really about having the complete view and context, so that when you do assign training to a driver or take action with them, you're doing so for based on all of the information and not just one siloed data set, if you will. For CSA specifically, that said, you can see that we do have CSA information on here for the driver. We'll tell you all their inspections, violations, and crashes they've had. You can access the report details from here as well. And then you can see we are scoring drivers across individual CSA scores. Some of you may not know, but there actually is a driver CSA scoring methodology. It's just not made public. Only enforcement officers actually have access to it. So like a lot of things that Vigilo and Samba has done over the years, we've taken that methodology and incorporated it into our system. So we score drivers across the CSA basics for each DOT that they have activity on, and a lot of our customers use that just to evaluate drivers specifically on a CSA basis. On these profile pages, you can, just like alerts, assign training, which again, having all this information in one location is very helpful to do, and then you can track training there. And then through notes and the ability to attach documents, you can track training or compliance in general, just keep everything in a consolidated central location and, upload whatever files or information you need to have on that driver. So as a whole, training is a very important aspect to what we offer, as well as lowering your CSA score specifically. We typically have a slide that we'll share on this, but it really is representative of like this life cycle or this wheel where, we're monitoring the information, you're staying up to date on it, you have workflows to manage that, you have training to influence change and impact the driver behavior management, and then it completes the circle, so to speak. And so without that training piece, that life cycle tends to break down. And really that's how you lower your CSA scores, again, is taking the right targeted actions, pinpointing your problems, and training your drivers to prevent new violations from occurring while you wait for the CSA points from previous violations to fall off. And so I'll leave you with this last slide that shows our value and impact that we can provide from a training perspective to actually lower your scores. So for example, a number of years back, we did a study where we looked at the industry averages for each CSA basic and compared that against our customer base for those of our customers who utilized our training solutions. So after looking at about 12 million courses that have been taken across our entire client base, we discovered that those clients had an improvement on their CSA scores by an average of 24 points, which is a pretty significant impact. And that's just being a customer in general, not even looking at activity or usage. So when we looked at customers who had assigned 4 or more lessons per user per year, which was just about 25 minutes of online training each quarter, so not a lot, that improvement increased to 30 points on average better. And then for customers who assigned 6 or more training lessons per driver per year, that improvement increased to 30 points on average for the basics. So again, it's a very tangible and real way to improve CSA scores, and that's again really what it comes down to is taking targeted trainings and interventions with your drivers. All right. With that, I think we'll open things up to questions. We've got a few minutes left. Hopefully I did a good job of running through our CSA monitoring solutions, but also talking about what Samba has to offer in general, because it's all, like I said, very much related and important.
Great, thank you so much, Steve. I appreciate that awesome webinar. I do have some questions here. So the first one is, does the CSA score monitoring and the training, does it help improve your CSA score with the DOT?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it won't, if you assign a training, for example, to a driver, it won't have a direct impact where it's like the DOT recognizes that you did the training and they reduce your score as a result. Really, the name of the game is assigning training to your drivers to make sure that they're well trained and are safe and not going to incur future violations. So really, it's about creating a culture of safety and being proactive rather than reactive.
Great, thank you. Another one is, how often does your CSA score data come through?
Daily. So we rely on the monthly scores. We don't necessarily change anything with that, right? So it's your CSA scores are what they are, but we download and monitor CSA data on a daily basis. So it'll flow into our system and you'll get those email options or notifications as well if you've configured those.
Great. Another one, can you file a data queue challenge through the system, or do you have to go into data queue separately?
Great question. Right now, you do have to file it separately from our system. The Discover Drivers workflow does do a good job of highlighting those or identifying those for you, though. And then you can easily pull up the FNCSA site and make the submission there.
Perfect. Last question I have is, do inspections with no points help your CSA score?
Yes, they do actually. So the more inspections you have, the more clean inspections you have, that will have a positive impact on your score relative to carriers who either haven't have violations on their inspections or don't have any inspections at all. So that's really what you should be, what your driver should be going for every time is a clean inspection.
Great. I think that's all the questions.
Well, Steve and Kate, thank you. Thank you today, Steve. Great presentation. We appreciate you. We appreciate Samba and your partnership. And we look forward for another series that we will do together very soon. Hope you guys have a good rest of your afternoon. And thank you as always for your partnership. Take care.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.